Sony has a strategy of being the product leader, having new innovative products that are constantly coming out, and that's Sony's strategy. That's what helps them stand out from the others. At least if you listen to Sony, you can have your own opinion about that. But that's their idea. And so what makes them unique is that they're product leaders. They're not particularly intimate with their customers. They don't really have a strong relationship with their customers, nor are they particularly efficient. Operating excellence is about efficiency. Let me explain a little more about that. So the next one, customer intimacy. A company that always gets credited for this is Nordstrom. If you shopped at Nordstrom, you know that they build a relationship with you, even if you're going in for a short shopping experience. They seem to know you. Ritz-Carlton's another one that's always highlighted. And so they stand out from other sources, not because they have the coolest, slickest new products, same products as another store, right? It's the same pants or the same suit or whatever. It's really because of their relationship with you that makes them stand out. So they've focused on the strategy of customer intimacy. Another example of operational excellence is Walmart. What Walmart does is they've organized themselves to be as efficient as possible. So they spend as little money as necessary in order to run their operation. It's not that they've got particularly unique products or a particularly unique relationship with the customer. It's because they're particularly unique in pricing. And so those are examples. You have all of those strategic options before you as well. And you have to make them. Because part of strategy is not only picking what you're going to do, but picking what you're not going to do. Because you can't do everything. And so you may be the product leader in your marketplace and say, look, what we're going to do is we're going to invent things. We're going to be really good at developing product and getting into the market, exploiting the market by speed to the market is what we call that. So that might be what differentiates you, makes you stand out from the competition because of your product. Or price is lower. But your strategy isn't that, it sounds like. It is to make your product better, to produce a unique customization or a higher product result quality than the competition. Is that fair? Does anybody focus on the operational excellence side as your primary strategy?
I'd say for us, product leadership and customer intimacy, so we really want to build that long-term quality relationship with the facility, and then introduce this new invention or product that we've just brought on. So that tying those two together really seems to be our mission.
Okay, so if you didn't hear in the back, you're trying to do more than one. You're trying to strike a balance of all of these, correct? Emphasis on these two, but also with some product innovation. Are you achieving all of your goals? So far, so good. It is very difficult to try to move on all three fronts. And so usually that's the recommendation that a strategist would give you is pick one and focus on it and just cover your flank on the ones that aren't as important. Because if you're trying to advance all three, that's triple the complexity of focusing on one. And so general strategic advice is pick the one that's going to make you stand out and stay competitive with the others. There are exceptions. I mean, take Apple as an exception. What are they? Do they do product leadership? Do they do customer intimacy? Or do they do operating excellence? Yeah, product leadership. But their stores have a pretty strong customer knowledge, right? Their stores differentiate them. The way you get music on their sites is an intimate thing. And what about operating excellence? Their manufacturing is well known. So, Apple's a unique example that if you're good enough, you can do more than one. And so if you're reaching your goals and you're pushing the envelope on more than one of these, then that's a strong testament to your management team. Most of us can't do that. And we have to pick one to focus on and just keep the flanks covered on the others. You had a question like that?
Isn't this driven a lot by the customer, molding yourself to what the customer wants? Because like in our industry, our customers are really limited to hospitals and nursing homes. So they may have a broad scope of this. They may all be channeled to one area to kind of fit ourselves in that mold.
Absolutely it does. Your question, his comment or question was, doesn't this relate to how your customer and what your customer needs? Yes, because if you were saying, look, we want to be really close and intimate with our customers and know them better than the other guys across town or our competition, then in the course of doing that, they're going to tell you through this relationship, but you know what we need? We need a purple one. We need it with, some modification, and because of your customer intimacy, you're going to go and create that customized version, right? So, which are you? Product leader or customer intimate? It's a fine line, and I'm not saying you have to absolutely pick one and not do the other, but think through, where am I investing my time and money? And it sounds like you're knowing the customer, and then you're modifying based on it. It's probably more customer intimate. That's a given.
I don't know if I'm thinking about this right, but in the Apple example, it seems to be the product leadership being customer intimacy. Some people just get that and not having, the Apple product, but for
And that's the lower price, right? So they're going to have a low price, low cost, because they're going to sell a high volume. What strategy would that be? Operating excellence, right? Yeah, it's Costco, or that's the Walmart strategy. And then what you were talking about, Kevin, is, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my prices higher, and my costs are also going to be higher than these guys, and I'm not going to go for as much volume. But the reason why my strategy will work is because the client's going to see some benefit for that. It's of more value, and so they're willing to pay that price. We'll talk more about that in the second half when we get into the customer aspect of things. Because how does that work? When would a customer pay more? And how do you position your strategy to accomplish that is a great discussion when you start thinking about, well, how am I going to grow? Well, I could say I'm going to grow by being the Walmart of the ambulance industry, have the cheapest ambulance rides in America, probably go to prison, right? But you can do it for a while. And so there's a strategy. It doesn't really work in our area. We have a little more challenge because of our price setting situation. But these are the classic different strategies. It really boils down to, you can be a product innovator, you can be a customer intimacy person, and by doing that, you create differentiation. You stand out. The purple cow analogy that the first speaker talked about, Seth Godin's book about the purple cow. Lots of brown cows, you see a purple cow that stands out. Well, you have to have that to make this strategy work. If you had a Me Too product that really wasn't any better than anybody else, and say, but I know how we can make money, we'll just price it higher and sell it to a few people. No, it's got to be a purple cow. It's got to stand out as unusual. We've talked about this a lot when I was at AMR. Let's just figure out how to get the $1 million transport. We don't have to do as many now, right? Just do it so good that somebody will pay us $1 million. We never figured out how to actually do that. But it was a great idea, right? Because you can't produce that kind of quality. There's no reason why someone would pay that kind of money for a transport. But you could do a lot fewer of them if you could. Does that make sense? And so pricing also fits into your strategy, and so it fits into your operation, and so it fits into your customer relationship, and so it fits into your financial results. See how they're all interconnected? And so you can't just pick a price without thinking through the overall implications of it. So as we talk about products, I just wanted to throw up a thing here about how new product innovations fit and work in the market. If you think about it, first thing that happens is there's some sort of shock that occurs to the environment. We talked about the environment, and your strategy must relate to the environment, because if not, you're not going to create a reality. So if something happens in the environment, let's say there's a change in technology, or there's a change in consumer taste. And since we used an Apple example, let's use another Apple example. They came out with, iTunes. And some of you may have seen that presentation or seen it on YouTube. If you haven't, Google, Steve Jobs, iPhone rollout, and iPod rollout, excuse me. And what he does is he reaches in his pocket, pulls one out, and goes, 1,000 songs in your pocket. And we all got it, right? Is that because it was a technology innovation? No, Microsoft had MP3 players out before that, and they were arguably better. What really it was is he created a consumer taste change because they understood the application. Oh, I want to have 1,000 songs in my pocket, so I'll buy an iPod, right? And so that's what he really did. But it created a shock in the environment because of that action. Some companies then capitalize on that. What they do is they respond to that opportunity, and by doing so, they can sometimes create what's called a protecting mechanism. They isolate themselves from competition because they stand out because of that innovation, because they capitalized on that opportunity. Make sense? And so I put some examples of that from our industry to sort of put a historical reference. You think about it, now all of you know that that's not a magic paramedic thing anymore, right? You can do that in the airport. Right? You just go over to the little thing, pull it out, put it on somebody, it does it. But at that time, that was a shock to the environment, and some people went for it and largely displaced those who didn't, right? And so it was a shock. It created a difference that isolated. There were a group of companies that went after public utility models. Public utility model was a particular economic model that's based on the idea that ambulance service operates like a utility would, and it should therefore have a monopoly. We can talk more about that in the next session if you like. I've run a few of them, so I have some familiarity. But it was a unique model, and so some companies, I worked for one, said, you know what, these are the wave of the future, we ought to bid on and learn how to run these things, and they became the largest companies in the 80s. Because that model became popular. It's not as popular now as it was at that time, but it was a unique differentiator for some companies because it was a change in the environment. Then there was managed transportation that occurred in the 1990s, and some companies started contracting with managed care organizations. The company I worked for at the time, AMR, contracted with Kaiser for the first nationwide non-emergency ambulance contract in America. First time Kaiser had ever contracted nationally for a service. First time anybody had done that. And we did it. It didn't work as well as we thought it would, but it differentiated us. We didn't capture it as well, but we did capture a bit of an isolating mechanism. Nobody else got to do Kaiser for 15 years, right? So we did that. The company I work for now, Pro Transport, has really grown. It's focused on, in the 2000 era, it started to focus on really this niche of interfacility transport and doing it extraordinarily well. And when Mike Seacrest and Elena Wharton started their ambulance service, one ambulance running out of a garage, they were competing with AMR, who had 95% market share in the area, and they grew largely just by outperforming AMR in this niche. And now we have about 135 ambulances, now single acquisition, simply by doing that better. And so ProTrans recognized this change in the marketplace and capitalized on it and created great success. And now, being a former AMR person, Kevin also was an AMR executive who's recently come aboard. We joke about Mike Seacrest has an AMR rehab program. We're glad. And then next is probably something like integration of our systems and our transportation services into the patient flow management systems of hospitals and healthcare delivery systems. Our systems in America can't continue to operate the way they do now, and so there's an environmental shock going on in hospitals. And so the people who figure out how to do that better are likely to have an opportunity to isolate themselves from competition. Make sense?